Business functions with and is affected by society. But business has not always recognized its relationship with society. It has not always taken its social responsibility into consideration in decision-making and in daily operations. In fact, social responsibility has not always been seen as an obligation. Profit has been seen as positive, not compatible with profit. Business cannot continue to view social responsibility in this light. Why? Because business does not operate in a vacuum. Because it does function with and is affected by society. Social responsibility is an environment with which business must deal. Hello, my name is Alex Burton, and this is the Business File. Our program today is about one of the environments with which business must deal: social responsibility. Social responsibility. As with the other environments which affect business, such as labor, the law, and the economy, business must acknowledge social responsibility and plan for it. It's not enough that business performs such major functions as producing, marketing, and accounting. Unless it takes social responsibility into account, business cannot succeed for long. Business is part of society, not separate. It cannot and should not ignore this context. Now, just what does the term social responsibility mean for business today? What has business done in this area? Why is it important? Today, we begin our search for the answers to those questions. We are going to Harvard University to talk with Professor John B. Matthews, Professor of Business Administration, and also with Professor Kenneth Goodpaster, a philosopher on the faculty of Harvard Business School. Professor Goodpaster teaches the ethical aspects of organizational policy. Professor Matthews likewise teaches social responsibility and is consultant to a number of companies in the private sector. Gentlemen, thank you for letting us visit.
Glad to do it.
And I'm sure your ideas will be valuable to us.
Well, we hope so.
Let me begin with you, Professor Matthews. In the opening of this program, we showed some cases where businesses have not met their social responsibilities, and my question is this: is there a danger of overreacting to these abuses and indicting the business community as a whole unfairly?
One of the problems is, and this is true of medicine, it's true of law, it's true of any profession, your profession or mine also. It's the bad ones that you read about. It's the good ones that go unsung. You know, like Thomas Gray, the Elegy in the Country Churchyard. Nobody ever heard of that young lad. Nobody ever hears of the good people in business. Nobody writes stories about them. But if some yo-yo in New York who's a graduate of the Harvard Business School or SMU or Stanford or someplace else does something that's wrong, it gets written up because it's news. Doing good and doing well don't get the attention that they should.
Professor Goodpaster, it seems that our view of social responsibility is an evolving thing. How has it changed over the years?
I suppose I would say that the most obvious pattern is that of moving from an external requirement on business to what we might describe today as an internal requirement. That is to say, in the past, from the middle of the 19th century all the way through the middle of the 20th century, the socially responsible behavior of business has always been thought of as an external obligation that would be in some way instrumental to furthering business's purposes. It would be a good thing to be philanthropic, for example. it would be a good thing to support a company town and to be paternalistic toward one's employees.
Why did they consider an external focus as a good thing?
Why would it be a good thing? Because a business that acted that way would be a business that in some way did better in the marketplace. I think what's changing in our understanding of corporate responsibility today is that we're beginning to see the very logic of management change. That is to say, we're beginning to see other forms of reasoning besides pure profit maximization displace, not in the sense of eliminate profit considerations, but move in alongside of them, so that managerial reasoning today and managerial concerns with social responsibility are much more internal to what it is to be a manager. It's part of the logic of management today in a way that it wasn't in the past.
Why do you say that, Professor Goodpaster?
Now corporations and managers are being asked in our undertaking to think in terms of corporate responsibility as they look outward on their external constituencies, their customers, the general public, the local community, but also inward at their employees, middle management, and all around.
Professor Matthews, in light of what Professor Goodpaster has said about the evolution of social responsibility, where do we stand now? What is business's social responsibility?
Social responsibility of business is to voluntarily forego some measure of short-run profit in order to contribute to the solution of some of society's major problems. Now, please understand that I'm saying some measure of short-run profits. I'm not suggesting, nor would I wish to seem to suggest, that businesses can survive without profits.
Let me stop you for a moment, Professor, and see if I'm understanding what you've both been saying. Social responsibility must be a sincere commitment, not just giving money to a charity for appearance's sake. And it is part of a manager's job, part of the activity he or she is responsible for. And a company needs to focus on society's needs, the external environment, and at the same time be concerned for its own internal environment, its own managers and employees. Social responsibility can and should be done simultaneously with making profits, and a company needs to be willing to forego some measure of short-range profit to solve a social problem. This is pretty involved. Just why should a business be concerned about social responsibility? Professor Matthews.
It's in business' own best interest, in the long run, to help society solve some of its problems. That's the way a utilitarian philosopher would answer that question, if he believed what I believe. But I think there's a more important reason for it, and that has to do with the fact that, in my judgment, most of the people who run companies, most of the people who work in companies, don't lead what I'd call 9-to-5 lives. They lead full lives. And even though they are business people, I think they would like to feel that they've left something tangible and that their companies have left something tangible behind them. That they will do things because they're morally right. Not just because of self-interest in the long run. Not just because the law may say yes or no in regard to certain kinds of things, but because they believe as individuals that some sorts of things are right and some sorts of things are wrong.
Are there additional reasons?
If you take a look at an economy such as the one we have in the United States, the vast majority of jobs are there. The economic power is overwhelmingly large, if that's a fair phrase. There's a lot of imagination, there's a lot of intelligence, there's a lot of hard work and dedication involved in the business community. And to visualize a situation in which the entire business community, and now I'm talking about the whole spectrum from Exxon all the way down to the man and the woman who run a little grocery store in a corner someplace, if the whole business community in this country feels that it has no responsibility to the country other than to produce its goods and services and make its profits for its stockholders, which again it has to do. But if those are the only responsibilities, then I think a powerful force for good, for progress, for development in this economy of ours is turned off in a way that it shouldn't be turned off. And there's a practical reason for this also, that if business were to take that stance, it seems reasonably clear to me, and I think to other people who've thought and studied this in this area, that you would find increasingly that the federal government, that the state governments would step in, either with actions of their own or with laws that require the business community to do some kinds of things that it now does not do, presumably would not want to do in the future.
Well, thank you for giving us that point of view, Professor Matthews. And I'd like to thank both of you for allowing us to visit. If you will, please stand by, and we'll rejoin you a bit later in the program. I'm beginning to find out that social responsibility has a number of elements to it. It's more than enlightened self-interest. It seems to me I'm hearing that it's not just a reasonable business strategy, but an absolutely essential one. Well, we've prepared a brief documentary on some of the social problems being addressed by business throughout the country. Perhaps it'll help us come to grips with the complexities of this issue.
Business is becoming involved in society. It is accepting its social responsibility more and more, and it is using its great storehouse of talent and imagination and resources to attack some of society's problems. Los Angeles. A company establishes a program to help high school students make dramatic improvements in reading, math, and language. In other cities, a company provides work for people homebound with disabilities. They are put to work at computer terminals in their home, giving them a renewed sense of purpose. At a child development center, a company helps children learn basic reading and math while their parents work. Disadvantaged young men and women are obtaining the basic skills and training they'll need to obtain and keep a job. Who provides the training? A private corporation. A large company supports and encourages small businesses with its technology and resources to improve their chances of survival. A company establishes inner-city programs to create new jobs and the formation of new small businesses. It helps assure affordable housing alternatives, promotes neighborhood safety and environmental improvement. A company creates rural development programs to increase the productivity and profitability of small farms and small rural businesses, makes high technology available to the agricultural entrepreneur. In these and many other ways, business is in the business of making life better for all of society.
The social responsibility programs we just saw could well be the work of many companies because this kind of involvement and investment by companies is going on all over the country. However, all of the programs identified in that piece were the work of a single company, Control Data Corporation of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we're visiting in Minneapolis now with Dr. James Worthy, a director of Control Data, and a professor of management in the Kellogg Graduate School of Management at Northwestern University. Professor Worthy, we are indeed glad to be here with you today.
Very glad to be here.
It's apparent from what we just saw that Control Data has a heightened sense of social responsibility. But what does the term social responsibility mean to Control Data?
For Control Data, the term social responsibility means utilizing its experience, its skills, its organizational resources, its economic resources to address unmet needs of society. Now, all businesses address unmet needs. If there's not an unmet need, there's not a market. But the thing which distinguishes Control Data from most businesses is that Control Data considers a very much wider range of unmet needs as offering legitimate and profitable opportunities for business endeavor.
Why has Control Data become involved in social responsibility programs?
For two reasons. One, the management of control data has a genuine concern about many of the problems it sees around it. Control data sees the opportunity of using the skills and experience and the resources of its organization to address some of these needs which are not typically addressed by business organizations. So appreciation for and concern for the unmet needs is one of the reasons. The second reason, it has to accompany the first, is the control data sees in these areas possibilities for a profitable business enterprise. And control data approaches these as business opportunities, approaches them as markets, if you will, rather than as philanthropy, which is the typical manner in which business addresses needs of the kind we're talking about.
Could we talk about some of the specific programs the company has undertaken?
Well, it covers a pretty wide range. There's a Fair Break program, for example, whose purpose is to prepare culturally and educationally deprived young people to become employable people, and in that way qualify for entry into the labor market. It has a homework program, which does the same thing for physically handicapped people. It takes them off the relief rolls and puts them back into productive and rewarding employment and opportunities for normal careers, which they might not otherwise have. There is a program which deals with the rehabilitation of distressed inner city areas. There's another program called Rural Ventures, which is aimed at revitalizing small-scale agriculture. There's a whole education field, which is built around the Plato computer-assisted learning system. It includes business centers, which provide specialized services to small business enterprises. It includes education delivered through the Plato system. It includes financial aid through a venture capital fund and through the facilities of commercial credit. But all of these focused on the encouragement of small businesses.
Over time, what do you think the impact of these programs will be, and what kind of results do you expect?
Well, I think it'll be very positive. A great many people are going to be able to find productive employment, rewarding careers who might not otherwise have been able to do so. A great many people in distressed inner city areas and on decaying small-scale farms are going to be able to find satisfying ways of life because of this. Educationally deprived people will be able to acquire basic education, basic educational skills, which they might not be able to acquire as effectively by traditional means. So I can see many positive gains for people and for the society as a whole.
Could we pause here for a moment, Dr. Worthy? I'd like to ask Professors Matthews and Goodpaster to rejoin us for our concluding discussion. Professor Matthews, we've heard today about a number of programs designed to help solve the very real human problems in our society. What does it take to make these programs work?
What really makes a significant difference to a corporation is the values that the person up at the top of the corporation has. If the man or the woman who's the head of the corporation really believes in this thing, really believes in it and practices it, and shows that he or she believes in it and practices it, that's going to have a tangible impact upon the people in an organization, even though what's coming down is intangible in a sense. If he or she doesn't believe in it, then codes of conduct and these other kinds of things, they're not going to really make much difference. So it's the atmosphere, the climate, the culture within the corporation, which is essentially established by the person or the people up at the top of the corporation, that has another positive impact, if the attitude is positive, on the degree of social responsibility that executives at lower levels are willing to assume.
Dr. Worthy, have you found this to be the case at Control Data?
Well, the commitment starts at the top. It starts at the level of the chief executive officer, who spends a large proportion of his total time and energy, physical as well as mental, to dealing with these problems, thinking through how the company can address them effectively. Meetings of the board of directors, large parts of the meetings of the board are devoted to a discussion of these, of exactly these kinds of things that we're talking about here.
Let's suppose a company establishes a social action program. What kinds of monitoring devices are available to make sure the program is working? Professor Goodpaster.
One corporation that I am aware of and that I think could serve as a model, it's a multinational corporation, does business all around the world and all around the United States, has an annual audit, management audit, not displayed in the form of some glossy annual report that says, look how good we are. It's a company that goes around from plant to plant, from management region to management region, and invites the management of each of those areas to discuss some of the ethical problems, the corporate responsibility problems that are facing it. Not just off the top of their head, there is a well-written code of conduct that is shared across the world in this corporation. And it's code-related kinds of things that corporate management is looking for in these audits. A report is done. It's discussed by the board of directors. And when necessary, action is taken to repair a problem, to give advice.
Can you provide any other examples, Professor Matthews?
Some companies, in effect, perform what in the education industry we call social audits annually. A social audit, described in simple language, is the social equivalent of a financial audit. It simply says, what have we done during the past year that we can be specific about, that's made a contribution, that's helped the corporation make a contribution to this kind of social problem, that kind of social problem, so forth and so on.
Dr. Worthy, how does Control Data monitor its programs?
Very closely. Let's understand that these programs are approached as businesses, not as philanthropies. If the company's efforts to help the chronically unemployed should take the form of philanthropy, the company would simply write a check, put it in the mail, and that would pretty much be it, to go back to running its business. But if Control Data addresses that particular problem as a business and puts its money into that business in the form of an investment, it watches it very carefully. The people who are in charge of these programs are just as responsible for the effective operation and the profitable operation of those endeavors as any other branch of the business.
Gentlemen, it's been a most instructive experience. I believe you've shared views with us that have a far-reaching impact on business operations. Dr. Worthy, thank you.
Well, Alex, it's been a pleasure to be here.
Professor Matthews, thank you for a good conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And Professor Goodpaster, thank you so much for allowing us to visit.
You're welcome.
It seems to all come down to this. A company may do everything right in its business environment, but if the social environment is not healthy and stable, that company is not going to prosper. A business is a part of that environment. It has to accept its position sincerely and make its decisions in this light. Business cannot operate in isolation. The very health of business and society are intimately related. Until next time, I'm Alex Burton, and this has been The Business File.
The preceding program is part of a college credit course.